What is crack-a-lackin', fellow thermonuclear AFers? I am Dan Valley coming at you with a brief intro. This is going to be the Houston Rockets look ahead. I brought on Red Nation Hoops' Salman Ali. Follow him on Twitter at Salman Ali NBA, at SALMANALI NBA. We went over an hour on the Rockets. It was a great combo. I think you'll really enjoy it. We recorded this before I went on vacation, so if anything's a little outdated, I'm not going to update this with a different intro. But if something major happens, I, of course, will. So hopefully you're still hearing this. Just my very quick reminder, please subscribe if you're new around here. Hit that sub button on YouTube. Subscribe to us on Apple and Spotify. Ratings and reviews on Apple help us out a ton. Ditto for Spotify with the ratings. So head over there, even if you're not using them. Tell people about us. Word of mouth recommendations go a long way. Share our content, our videos on YouTube, our shorts, our TikToks. That helps as well. Follow us on the socials. You will see those in the podcast and YouTube descriptions. And support us. If you would like to, please purchase our merch. The link to that is in the podcast and YouTube description, our store on TeePublic. A lot of fun sayings from the podcast, like my opening line and some stuff Grant says. And join our Discord. Let's help build that up. Twitter's going to shit. It's clear. We don't know if we're going to be on Threads or Blue Sky. I'm on Blue Sky at Dan Valley if you want to check me out there. Go into Discord to continue the discussion. The link to that is in the podcast and YouTube description. But let's get to some great Rockets talk, all things Houston Rockets with Salman Ali of Red Nation Hoops. And you should be sure to subscribe to his Substack, his podcast. The link to that, the website will be in the podcast and YouTube description. Let's hop to it. Salman, the question that everyone wants to know the answer to. How the heck are you doing?
Doing okay. Just got back from vacation, was overseas for about 10 days there. But I'm back, recharging my batteries today. Feel pretty good. And I got four podcasts scheduled this week. One of them is actually my own, which is great. So I mean, that's what happens, man. When you're on vacation, you just put stuff off. You know, people ask you for stuff and you're just like, okay, I'll do that when I get back.
Including me. You told me you were going to record with me on vacation, and I preferred not to do that. And I'm glad you ultimately, because I don't like interrupting people's vacations. But I have, and also when you have the prep to go on vacation, like right now, I'm trying to, like these look-aheads that we're doing, I'm trying to backlog them so our listeners still have, like 3 or 4 episodes to listen to. So this will be podcast 3 of 6 that I'm recording in roughly 24 hours, like in a 24-hour span.
Yeah, it's like that, and it's unfortunate because it's August, and I feel like we should be able to relax now. We should be able to just stop doing stuff. But no, I guess not. I guess we have to continue doing stuff until we stop doing this.
Are you ready to talk some Houston Rockets?
Yeah, we might as well.
So let's start with this on the Houston Rockets. We've talked about it at length, but in case people didn't listen to that podcast we did for your pod, what were your just general thoughts, takeaways, impressions from the Rockets offseason? We'll get to the Ime Udoka stuff, but just like what they did with not even just the personnel they put in place, but the steps they took to get them, so on and so forth.
I thought it was good. I thought they had a good offseason. I thought letting Steven Silas go was a very good move. I thought replacing him with Udoka was, I think, a solid hire. I think even if I may have favored Frank Vogel and Nick Nurse, I think Udoka was right there after those two names. I think they killed it on draft night. Cam Whitmore was having Cam Whitmore fall to you at 20. I still can't believe that happened. I love Amen Thompson. Obviously, both those players have flaws that they're going to have to really work out, and that makes their floors lower. But I love the upside play that they had on draft night. Free agency, before I was a bit lower on them. I thought the door not taken with James Harden was weighing down their grades significantly for me. I initially gave their free agency a C+, B-. I probably upgrade that to a flat B. I thought they had a decent free agency. I still don't love the Fred VanVleet deal, but I think it was reasonable. One can reasonably say that was the best use of getting a point guard. I think there was I might have explored being the third team in the Porzingis trade to try and get Malcolm Brogdon instead for his 2-year deal. Maybe I tried to go get Chris Paul or be the Jordan Poole dump team. I explored those other avenues because I think they were there for Houston, but I'm not upset at VanVleet. Definitely not as upset as I was 72 hours ago. I would say the Dillon Brooks deal was, decent. Like I think was, he's definitely overpaid, but not as overpaid as I think most people assume to be. I think he was probably like an $18 million a year player, fair market value. He's getting paid 22 for this contract, so about $4 million a year over, and it's a declining scale deal as the CBA is going up. So I think it's going to work out to be fine. Actually, I think those last 2 years might actually end up being pretty good. So I think the Dillon Brooks deal is fine. The Jeff Green deal, the Jeff Green and the Jock Landale contracts are kind of insane. They're just like trade exceptions. They just signed two $8 million a year trade exceptions,
Yeah.
which is that's some pretty creative stuff there by the Rockets front office. I really liked it. Thought it was kind of underrated that they were able to do that. Yeah, just a solid free agency, good off season. I'm happy with what they did. I think the stuff the disagreements I may have with them are just nitpicks, right? Like the coaching hire, like picking Udoka. I mean, picking Udoka over Vogel or Nurse. That's a nitpick. It's not me saying that's a bad hire. You know, going Brogdon instead of going with this VanVleet deal. It's a nitpick. It's not saying it's a bad signing. The nitpicks I may have are just that, nitpicks. I think they had a pretty good offseason.
I'd be with you. I guess my quibbles are a little bit different than yours. I think the Fred VanVleet deal is an above market value, sure, but it's 2 years. Like that third year and if you're picking up that third year option, something good has probably happened, or you have another deal sort of set up. And just because you want to start, I'm assuming Sengun, I like the idea of, okay, like you're really going to need to backstop him or front stop him, if you want to say, with like good perimeter defenders. Having VanVleet and Dillon Brooks in the starting lineup will help you do that, especially with Jalen Green as part of that five as well. I took more issue with the Dillon Brooks deal. The money, you're right, it's declining. I still think it's an overpay. Also, the machinations to get there when it's like, all right, you gave up Ty Washington and Usman Garuba and KJ Martin and Josh Christopher to make sure you got there. I think some of that had to do with there was clearly a faction within Houston's front office that believed that they were getting Brook Lopez, and that didn't pan out. It's nothing they did is damaging. And it doesn't give them an identity. I think it gives them more coherence with the way their roster is built and some of the lineups they could run. I am curious, though, to ask you, do you think that they're going to be able to rein in Dillon Brooks's offensive usage with this team? Because I do think that's key to his working out. I want to make clear, he's a damaging offensive player. Like by the numbers, even when you watch him, he can have some nights where he looks really good, but he is overall, if he indulges his strongest inclinations, he's a pretty damaging offensive player.
Well, to kind of backtrack there, like I should have mentioned that, like the Brook Lopez pursuit was also weighing down that free agency grade. Right? Like that's why I didn't give them a B+ or an A-. Like I didn't like the fact that they were pursuing Brook Lopez at all, much less the extent, like how badly they wanted him. Like they were willing to do all these trades, give up all these players and assets for pretty much nothing. They ended up being nothing. But even if they got Brook Lopez and they did all that, I don't think it would have been worth it. So yeah, I mean. Just as a quick aside, I didn't like that part of their free agency. But as far as reining in Dillon Brooks, if there's a coach that's going to do it, this is the guy, right? Like,
he wanted him too, right? Udoka was,
yeah. And if you look at what he was able to do with Marcus Smart, Marcus Smart was taking, I can't remember the exact number, but I remember the year before Udoka was the head coach of the Celtics. Let's just say he took 100, right? Pull up 3-pointers. When Udoka came in, that got halved. Like his 3-pointers per game got halved. Like that's pretty drastic. If he's able to do that with Dillon Brooks, or even if he's able to pull it down by 40%, right? Because he was taking like 4 pull-up 3-pointers per game last year. Dillon Brooks, I think, it was a lot. It was a lot of pull-up 3-pointers. If he's able to get him down to 2 or 3, like that's a win. That's a win. I think if you look at his catch and shoot numbers, he's actually a better 3-point shooter than one might imagine.
By the way, he was at a little over 2 off the dribble threes per game last year. He had 5 off the dribble jumpers in general, though,
Okay.
and was
Yeah.
statistically one of the 3 worst players in that. But please carry on.
Yeah, his catch and shoot numbers are actually pretty good, right? Like he's actually a better 3-point shooter than one might imagine. Like what's weighing it down is he takes too many dog shit attempts, right? Like
And
if
teams don't defend him the way they do because his catch and shoot 3-point percentage over the last 3 years, I believe, is higher than Marcus Smart's. The issue is that defenses are more inclined to guard Marcus Smart than they are Dillon Brooks, especially come the postseason. I interrupted you twice. I apologize.
No, you're totally fine. That's how we do these podcasts, man. So what? Yes, that's true, right? Like he is defended differently than Marcus Smart. I also, do want to point out that Dillon Brooks does not have nearly the same amount of playoff experience as Marcus Smart, right?
Great point.
So like, as bad as he was in that Lakers series, I would just, say like this guy's like 26 years old and he's probably only had like 2 playoff appearances. So I think it's probably fair to say that he won't be as bad as he was in that Lakers series. I'm not saying he's going to be what Marcus Smart is in the playoffs, which is like a really incredibly useful player, but I think he's not going to be as damaging as he was in that series. And really, if Brooks is at the point where he can help Houston get to the playoffs, it's a win, right? Like we're not even at the point where we can talk about the playoffs with Houston, right? Like that's like a conversation like next year, right? Like we can talk about that
Hopefully,
stuff next year, maybe the year after that. Like they're just trying to make a play-in game. They're just trying to be competitive next year, right? They're trying to win 30 games next year, right? Like that's like where they're at as a franchise. If they can get there, that's great. Like I think Dillon Brooks, his faults, yeah, they're real, but for the Rockets, like their whole roster was flawed last year, and he probably has less flaws than a lot of the players that went out, right? Because he is a very, very strong perimeter defender. He is a good catch and shoot 3-point shooter. He is a good communicator. I think those things will help, not just help them in the short term, just getting better as a defense, but long term, I think those habits that he passes along to the Tari Easons, I'm sorry, forgetting his name. We just talked about him, 16th in the draft.
Oh, Cam Whitmore?
Cam Whitmore, 20th in the draft, excuse me.
Yeah.
The Cam Whitmores, right? Like the Jabari Smith Juniors. These habits that he's able to pass down to these wing types, I think are going to be helpful in the development process, and probably why Udoka was so intent on signing Dillon Brooks. So yeah, I think it's possible that he can curb some of those offensive foibles, but if you look at where Houston is, I don't know if they really had their pick of the litter in free agency. I think they really had like a targeted approach in terms of like the guys they could go get. Like I think they very carefully chose Fred VanVleet because Fred VanVleet was gettable, right? Like they very carefully chose Dillon Brooks because Dillon Brooks was gettable. Brook Lopez at one point in time was gettable, right? So like that's why they chose those guys. They're going to be helpful, but like this is a team that won 21 games last year, right? Like they weren't, and this wasn't a very, very strong free agent class. So this was you got to weigh those things into context too as well.
Who do you think benefits the most? The single player that will benefit the most from having Fred VanVleet on this team?
I think probably Jalen Green.
That was my pick too. I'm glad we're on the same page there.
Yeah, the Jalen Green's biggest weaknesses as a prospect, and as a player right now, obviously are playmaking and defense, right? Like those are the two things that he is not gifted at. Like he's never been like that was never his thing as a calling card as a prospect. His calling card as a prospect is like phenomenal athlete, gifted scorer, right? And never really had to be the lead playmaker because in high school he would just score 30 points and that was enough to win the game, right? Like he was just that good of a scorer. He never needed to operate in the pick and roll because he never needed a pick, right? Like he was just his first step is just that is that great, right? Like I think, and if you look at Fred VanVleet, like these are things that he is good at. He helps make up for those weaknesses, and he helps teach Jalen some of those strengths, right? He will help Jalen become a better defender. He will help Jalen become a better playmaker. He will help Jalen watch film. He will help Jalen in all these off the court elements as a leader. I'm never the guy who puts so much stock into that stuff, but I think VanVleet is very good at that kind of stuff, and Green will need to become good at that kind of stuff. So I think he is the guy that off the bat, also good 3-point shooter, so will help space the floor for Jalen Green. He's the guy right off the bat I think will benefit the most.
I'm with you there. The Ime Udoka hire, we've talked about a lot, the hire itself already. Do you have any insight or feel for what might change the most about how this team operates on the court or behind the scenes with him in charge?
Yeah, it seems like they're going to have a tight leash. Like that's what they're saying, at least, right? Like they're going to have a tight leash when players make mistakes. So if that's the case, the guys who are pretty mistake prone, I would say probably on the defensive end of the floor, are going to get pulled a lot, right? So Alperen Sengun, he was already getting pulled a lot. I think he might get pulled even more. Not KJ Martin, excuse me, Kevin Porter Jr. I think will get pulled a lot more for the turnovers that he made, right? Like I think Jalen Green, for how bad he was as a defender, he's not going to get away with that next year, right? I think and there are options, that Udoka has that Steven Stiles didn't have. Like he has Amen Thompson, he has Dillon Brooks, he has other guys to play on the perimeter when these guys go sit. So I think that's part of the reason they went out and got those guys. Is like, yeah, I'm going to hold you accountable, and I'm going to play this guy in front of you that's better than you anyways, right? Like I think that's kind of why the Rockets when got those guys, is like they can credibly say that this guy's just playing better than you, so we're going to play this guy ahead of you, right? That's why I was worried about the Brook Lopez acquisition, because it's like, yeah, I wasn't a fan of like Alperen Sengun playing like 10 minutes per game, like next year. Like,
you weren't?
No, I wasn't. No. That idea didn't exactly make me excited. So I'm glad that there's no one that can credibly take Sengun's minutes away, at least on both ends of the floor. I think Jeff Green will pull some minutes away when Udoka gets frustrated. Like they're going to throw in the old vet that knows how to play, switchable defense, right? Like Jeff Green is probably going to be playing a lot of minutes. Jock Landale might take some minutes. I don't suspect he'll take a lot, but it's going to be interesting.
He is a better, not just than Sengun. He's actually a better switch defender than I think a lot of people realize. And so if that's how the Rockets want to play, it wouldn't shock me, like you said, if Sengun is getting this quick hook that we see lots of Landale if they don't want to give up. Just because if you put Green in at the 5, I don't know what your rebounding looks like. Maybe you trust like Tari Eason and Amen Thompson if they're in the game at the same time to really crash the boards for you then.
I actually think the backup center next year is going to be more Jabari Smith.
That's like skipping steps ahead in the podcast. I'm interested in that.
Yeah, I actually think and it's a look that I think we're going to see a lot of, because he actually did pretty good. And like some of his best minutes last year were actually at the center position. I don't remember his net rating at the center position, but just from watching it, I do remember it looked pretty good. And playing next to Tari really benefited him. And I think that's probably going to be the front court pairing if it's not Sengun and Jabari, the front court pairing of the future, right? Like Tari and Jabari. So I think Udoka is going to give that a look in backup units, and they have Tate there, so like he's going to be, I think, in terms of difference next year, I think Tate's going to play a lot. Like I think he's going to play a lot.
Oh, really?
More. Yeah,
I was worried he was going to fall by the wayside, just given like kind of everyone that's like the Rockets. There's, for as better talent wise as they are, there's still just like now you kind of have to coordinate and organize this, and certain people are just not going to get minutes. I thought he was going to be the one, just with Brooks, Amen Thompson, Tari Eason. I thought he would be the guy that maybe falls by the wayside.
He's going to be the guy. He is coach's catnip, man. I'm telling you, during preseason, I think Steven Silas' first year, Tate gets the starting position on game 1, right? And
Mhm.
it was such a shock to everyone, right? Like this rookie coach is making this ballsy decision on game one to play this rookie. And it was because he impressed that much in training camp and he was that good defensively right away. And I'm telling you, he's going to make a strong impression on Udoka in training camp, and he's going to earn those minutes. And I think Udoka's already pretty familiar with Tate. They've been in communication. I think he's probably going to be an integral force in that locker room, and someone that he leans on. So I think he's probably going to be like one of the four more important four front court players for Houston next year. So that's going to be interesting to watch. And I think as far as difference, I would say they're definitely going to switch more on defense, and I think
Mhm.
hedge and recover is a scheme I think I would like to see them implement with Sengun, because I don't think he's a drop defender. I don't think he's a switch defender. I think he is someone you throw in for hedge and recover schemes. I've seen him do well in switches on certain circumstances, but like you look at what the Kings did with I'm sorry, forgetting the name. I'm so bad with names. Uh
Domantas Sabonis.
Demonis Sabonis and what the Nuggets did with Jokic. Like that works. For
Mhm.
some reason it seems to work. And I think you're going to see some of that implemented next year with Sengun. And I think you're going to see a lot more communication. Like the Rockets didn't talk to each other last year. They yelled at each other last year. So I think that's probably going to be something I'm very curious to see if it gets cleaned up a lot. I suspect that it will. He has a great reputation of turning teams around on the defensive end, and I think that's probably the immediate impact you're going to see from him.
What are your early impressions of Amen Thompson? What are you going to be watching for most closely in his rookie year? What type of role do you expect him to have as the Rockets are clearly dramatically trying to improve upon their record? Just that whole bag of stuff.
Uh, so a lot of Amen I wasn't really surprised of because I saw a lot of him in OTE. What I was surprised of with him was like a lot more poised in half court settings than I thought he would be. Right, because he didn't play a lot of half court last year. The OTE is like a strange league. Like they are allergic to half court basketball, right? And he didn't get a lot of possessions in the half court to run offenses. And like in those 26 or whatever minutes he played in the summer league, he seemed okay. Like he wasn't like panicking and he wasn't like shying away from shooting mid-range jumpers or getting to the free throw line. Like there wasn't like a Ben Simmons like allergic reaction to like trying to get to the free throw line or like having a counter once players walled off the paint, right? Like I think that's going to be interesting to see how he develops those counters. Like, does he get a floater? Does he get a mid-range jumper? Like whatever he does, when teams eventually treat him like the non-shooter that he has been, like how does he react? I think he's probably going to play around 20 to 25 minutes per game next year. I think he's like this is probably like the best possible thing for him, honestly. I don't know if he was someone I would have wanted to start next year, even if they never got Fred VanVleet. I think having him play off the ball a little bit is helpful. I think him developing a 3-point jumper is going to be integral for the Rockets long term. So I think the fact that he's going to have to be someone who's consistently playing off the ball is helpful for his development. I think it's actually a good thing that he's coming off the bench because he's not ready yet, I don't think. And I think these other elements of his game that didn't get enough time or refinement at the OTE will get a spotlight. Like defense, I think he has a ways to go defensively. I think his brother's actually a little bit better right now. And I think if he spends more time on those elements of his game, he's going to get playing time. He's going to get minutes, and he's going to, more importantly, long term be looked at as the franchise point guard. So I think that's probably what I would expect from next year. Backseat role, but not an impactful backseat role. I think he's going to be pretty fun to watch next year.
That would be I was very impressed because I don't watch these guys really before. I try to cram before the draft, and then we saw barely nothing of him in summer league. But I'm very impressed with his 0-step speed, where it's like that's not someone who needs like a ball screen or momentum to get going downhill. And I also just sort of like his around the world burst. on defense to where like, yeah, there might need to be more discipline there, but like that's every which way that you point, like he's going to be able to get there and get around people or close out on guys or stick with guys no matter how like directional their ball handling is. I am curious though to take advantage of, you mentioned him playing off the ball. I think what you're going to need to do off the ball or on the ball is to have the spacing ecosystem necessary to like give him sort of a bunch of runway. I'm curious if they'll get two lineups, and I think they can get to them with the personnel they have. That's sort of I know he didn't shoot too well. He had some stretches where he shot well from the corners, but like if you're Jabari Smith Jr. at the 5, like that, those might be the lineups where you have the spacing kind of necessary to get Amen moving off the ball or just give him the ball and get him going downhill. And so I hope we see a lot of those types of arrangements with him.
Yeah, and that's partially why, like, I think that Jabari will play a lot of backup 5. It's to space the floor for Amen. I think, like you're right. It's not hard for Houston to put together 4-out lineups for Amen to play with, right? Like I think you're gonna have Jalen Green there. You're gonna have Fred VanVleet there. You're gonna have Jabari there. You're gonna have Tari there. You're gonna have.
There you go. You're there.
Yeah, you're there. I mean, I think Amen's size gives him a lot of versatility to defend a bunch of positions for Houston, and just kind of experiment these first few years. I think that kind of stuff is like it's pretty consequential. Like you see players like learn these traits as background players, and once they're in the forefront, they still have it, right? And I think that's going to be something that he is going to really benefit from. Just being a guy who has to earn it a little bit, but earn it in the areas where he is not adept, right? Like he is not adept at cutting off the ball. He is not adept at 3-point shooting. He is not adept at off-ball defense, right? Like I think these are areas where it's helpful that he is playing in the background. It may make for some rough moments, and he may get yelled at a lot next year, but that's perfectly fine. I think he's still going to be very fun if you're a Rockets fan to watch next year.
What if kind of the same question for Cam Whitmore? And I think his situation is more complicated just because you kind of look at their surplus, I would call it, of perimeter players right now. Like, is there a pathway to him kind of having a regular role on this team as a rookie?
Injuries. I think at this point he's going to be playing the bulk of his minutes in the G League with the Vipers, and that's fine. Like I don't think the Rockets wanted to draft the 20th pick. I think they were looking to trade that pick. They did not want more young players this year. But when Cam Whitmore falls into your lap, you're not going to pass up on that opportunity. And I think they're totally fine with him just developing in the background, finding opportunities when there are opportunities. And he is kind of someone that is part of like he is the picture of their embarrassment of riches, right? Like if you were to describe like how stacked the Rockets are with young talent, Cam Whitmore is like the first guy that comes to mind. It's like, okay, they don't really need this guy. They just have this guy, right? Yeah. And he's probably going to have to really scratch and claw and probably not get real. He's not really going to get any playing time until that front court rotation honestly gets traded a little bit. I think Jae'Sean Tate is a name I'd watch come the trade deadline. He's also a name I'd watch come next offseason. Just because his contract is dirt cheap, it's really flexible and attractive. The Rockets can combine it with other contracts to form an even crazier trade, especially with the Lawndale and the Green contracts that they have and the KPJ deal. Like they can find their way to getting like a really significant player if they really wanted to mid-season or next off season. But even if they just want to trade Tate flat out, just hey, let's go get another first or let's go get 2 seconds or whatever, I think that's a name to watch mid-season. I think it will be pretty gettable, and I think Houston.
He's also someone you might trade if you're the front office, just so Udoka doesn't play him too much over the younger guys.
Maybe, yeah, maybe. I honestly have no problem with Tate playing a lot next year. It's like I miss Tate. Like Tate was like a guy that like the Rockets could have used a lot last year, He's
That's the
just
injuries are key too to his trade value. Is like, is he going to be healthy? Like, he wasn't that healthy this past year, so how healthy will he be this year?
Yeah, I mean, he's just really, really good defensively. I mean, like that first year, he was bordering on like all defense potential. Like he was that good defensively, and I think he was someone that surprised a lot of people in terms of like how good he was, not only defensively but as a passer with the ball in his hands. So I think
Yeah.
he, I want to see him back, man. He's a fun player. He has real works in his game, and we all know what they are. But like he's not a starter, and that's fine. Like if he's your seventh man and he's providing what he's providing, I think you're very happy. And I think teams that are looking for depth pieces mid at the trade deadline will make calls.
What are you watching for the most from Jalen Green in year 3, who I think at this point I would say has been unfairly pigeonholed as like this sub-star volume scorer. There are flaws to his game, but there's more every level juice to what he does than I think people realize.
I'm looking to see how much he's built out his body. Number one, right? Like I want to see how much weight he's gained over the summer. Like I know it'll be a run. It's a running joke at every media day. How much weight did you gain or lose during the off season? But I think I want to hear his answer honestly because um, since his rookie year, I thought he was too skinny.
Mm.
I just thought like this is a guy that his body is holding him back from doing a lot. Not only defensively but offensively. Like I think ball handling, like he there are things he can't do as a ball handler right now because he's too skinny. It's hard to explain until you watch the film, right? Like he gets bullied on offense. Like teams are able to just take that ball from him because he is just not strong. And I think him adding some strength is going to do a lot. I think defensively, I'm going to be watching to see how much he improves under Udoka. Like those are the two biggest areas. Obviously, I'm going to be watching the playmaking, but I think that's kind of like the playmaking is something that like that's a luxury conversation. Like let's get to him being an efficient scorer first, right? Because then the playmaking opportunities are open up. So I think that the three things you're watching for is obviously the body, the defense, and can you become more efficient scoring the basketball than you have been? Can you get to 57% true shooting? Can you get to 56% true shooting? Uh, and if you're at that point, you're getting closer to what Jabari will be as a finished product. And after that, you can start working on the playmaking. After that, those playmaking windows will open up for you. So those three areas are what I'm looking for.
Yeah, and I think even you mentioned the playmaking specifically. It's just like he doesn't turn the ball over a ton for someone who's as high usage as him. And so like he was at almost 7 potential assists per game. If those tick up a little bit and you get guys who are going to hit shots off his passes more, like I don't know that he needs to be much better as a passer, is my point. And so I'm with you in the sense that it's a luxury because unless you want him to be the driving playmaking engine of your offense, and I kind of think it's clear he's best suited as like that secondary, tertiary type passer, or maybe he's doing that with second units, but not against opposing starting lineups. He's fine there. And so I'm so in on him, and I'm with everything you said. Someone else who I am so in on, and I think I'm a little bit higher on him than you. What are you kind of looking for from Jabari Smith Jr. in year 3? And do you think, and I've heard a lot, I've heard and read, just some people think that like the star upside isn't there for him. I thought he improved a great deal offensively after the All-Star break. How much you want to read into that? Him shooting 45+% from mid-range, 70% at the rim. That's up to you. But like he took some shots that like getting to shoot over people that were going in, that especially if you're going to put him at the 5 more, that he's going to be just such a mismatch nightmare. So I'm a really big believer. And even just, he was a better rim protector than I thought he was going to be overall. And it was almost just like, oh, he was a little bit less mobile or switchable, however you want to frame it, on defense than I thought he was going to be. And I still think that's just going to come along. And how much of that was maybe him playing with another big or not enough defensive talent in front of him? Just where are you sort of at with him, though?
Uh, I'll get into that. But let me backtrack a little bit to Jalen Green. So like on the playmaking, I'm with you. Like I think he's more better suited as a secondary guy. But like in order to if you're not gonna be that primary creator, man, you got to get good at defense. You got to get like that's the gift and the curse of like if you're not a guy with the ball in your hands all the time, you have to be like close to a plus defender at the minimum, right? Like, so he can't be bad. Like, there's no room for him being bad, right? Like, if he has the ball in his hand and he's averaging 8 assists per game, yeah, there's room for you being bad. When you're off the ball and you're getting your Klay Thompson on or whatever, right? Like, I'm not saying you have to be what he was on the defensive end, but you have to be you can't be negative, right? Like, you
Mhm.
can't be someone that the team consistently looks to hide every night, right?
Okay. Yeah,
You have
I
to
get that.
at some point get to a point where you're just not someone that the team is worried about, when they're planning out a series, right? Eventual when they're in the playoffs, like you're not, the team's not thinking about, okay, where the hell do we hide this guy, right? Like, I think that's something I want him to get to a point, uh, defensively. Back to Jabari. So I think oftentimes when I talk to people who are big Jabari Smith believers, I come off as a skeptic, and it's not that I'm skeptical. I actually like Jabari Smith. I had him third on my board, haven't changed it, right? I think what it is I just think he is so much of Jabari Smith is theoretical, right? Like, so much of
Mhm.
him, like the best version of Jabari hasn't shown itself at either the college level, or the high school level, or the NBA level. Like, it's so much like kind of what we saw at summer league, right? Like, he can become this guy. He can be X, Y, or Z if he does this, and this, right? Like, that's always my biggest hang up with Jabari. It's like, yeah, can he become a shot creator in the NBA one day? Maybe, but he hasn't been that at the end, at the high school level, at the college level. Like we're just really banking on a lot of outlier development, right? That's kind of what we're with Jabari. Like, that's I think what I'm looking for with him is, can you get to the point where you're making threes? Honestly, can
Yeah.
you get to the point where you're shooting 36% from three? Because like you were touted as a guy. I mean, not touted as a guy. Like, he was a guy. He was an awesome 3-point shooter. One of the best uh, kids I've ever seen shoot a basketball. Right? Like he's. I thought he was going to be like a 40% 3-point shooter for his career. Right? That's how good he shot at the high school and college level. So the fact that he had the year that he had was alarming to me a little bit. And part of it, I think, was the 3-point line is farther back than it was in college. Like, he 25 feet in the NBA, 22 feet in college, or 21 feet actually. So it's like 4 feet back that he's shooting. And he likes, not only that, he likes to shoot top of the key threes. Like, those are
Yeah.
like, so like that's even farther back. So I think that had a little bit to do with it. I also think like he was kind of trying to do too much and not letting the game come to him. So I think, you mentioned that stretch off the All-Star break. The game was coming to him. I think he is better suited to play in the mid, like get hot from mid range and then start shooting those 3-pointers. He's a weird player. He's a very strange player. I think, like, if you watch him at the high school level, what you thought was like, oh, this guy's like an awesome mid range jump shooter. I wonder if he ever develops a 3-pointer. He develops a 3-pointer in college, and like, it's like, okay, so he's just a 3-point shooter now. But then you realize more, he has to step back even more at the NBA level. So I think he is someone who gets comfortable shooting close range and then shoots well from 3-point range. And if that's the case, I think I'd like to see him dial back his attempts per game. Like, he shot like what, 5 or 6 at 3-pointers per game last year. That's a lot. Like, it's a lot for any player in the NBA, much less a rookie. Maybe dial that back to like 3 or 4. I think that'd be ideal. And maybe make more of those catch and shoot threes from the corners as opposed to pull up threes as a
He went through
trailing big.
he went through weird stretches too where he was like money from the right corner and couldn't hit a left corner three, and then it would flip flop
Yeah.
like completely. It was the most bizarre thing.
Yeah, it was strange. Like he really loves shooting those trailer threes, man. Like that was something he thrived off of college. So I get why he likes to go there, but man, like in the NBA, like I really do think he's gonna be in those corners more than he thinks, and I think that's going to benefit him. Honestly, like it's closer. It's also an easier shot. You're more likely to be open from there, and I think it would benefit him to kind of ease it back. Play a lot simpler, like simplify that offensive game. Defensively, I'd like to see more of him at the 5, as we kind of touched upon. Like
Do you
I
think we
think
get there, by the way? Like, do you think that because we kind of already talked about it a little bit, but like, you think they are going to look at playing him more at the 5 this year, even though they have Sengun, Green as a small ball 5, Jock Landale?
I really do. I really do.
Okay.
I do think he's going to be their backup center because I I think listen, if the Rockets don't believe in Alperen Sengun, and I'm just saying, this is just a aside, right? If they don't believe in him, they have to get a look at this guy at center, right? Because
Mhm.
I honestly don't know what other center option they have long term, right?
Not on the
Like
roster. Yeah, that's it. And I
yeah,
mean,
like
to be fair, like having Sengun and Jabari Smith Jr. is like those are good big man options to have. But if you don't view one of them as your center of the future, like, okay, well then you're out of options after that.
right, like so get a look at Jabari, right?
Yeah.
Like get a look at this guy at center, and get a look at Tari playing next alongside him. Like I think that's a nice that's a really nice front court defensive option for you. And I'd like to. I think he's a better rim protector than people give him credit for. I think he's a better help side defender than people give him credit for. Uh, I just think he has not had to do that because he played next to Walker Kessler at Auburn. And I think that's probably why Houston wanted to go get Brook Lopez, because they wanted to see if like he can go be like the Walker Kessler for them,
Yeah, yeah.
next to Jabari. And now he kind of has to fend for himself, and I'm happy actually that he has to fend for himself. I think it actually is better for his development if the team has to lean on him more defensively. Like I see more of Jaren Jackson Jr. from him than like
Wow.
Draymond Green, right? Like I think I don't
I
see.
get that.
Yeah, like I think he is more of a 4-5 than a 3-4 defensive. Like I don't think he's gonna be this jack of all trades. Like he's gonna defend 2 through 5. I don't see that from him. I think he's gonna probably be more of a he's gonna defend 4s and 5s, and he can switch on to 3s pretty well. Like I think that's probably gonna be what he is, and I think he's gonna be pretty damn good. Like as a help side defender, I think he's going to be pretty damn good as a shot blocker and a guy who gets his hands on a lot of balls in transition. So I think he's going to be a pretty good defender. It's not a bad thing. It's just not Draymond Green. That's what that is. I think if you were ever projecting him to be that kind of a defender, I think that was probably misplaced.
So Sengun, I know you're super high on him, and you can get into why. I'm sure anyone who listens to you knows why. Do you sense that there's still a lack of a plan or lack of faith in him based off how this roster was still constructed over the offseason and given who they also chased in Brook Lopez?
I am skeptical. Like I am skeptical because, like as you said, they still went after Brook Lopez, right? Like if they believed in this dude, they wouldn't have done that. They wouldn't have gone to the lengths they did to try and get Brook Lopez, right? They wouldn't have traded away 3 young players and 5 second rounders just to make the money work, right? Like I think this was something that they very intentionally wanted to go and get, right? I don't think that faith is there. I think I thought it was a Silas thing. It seems to be an organizational thing.
Mhm.
And so I think he's talented enough to still, be an all-star in the NBA one day. I'm skeptical if that's going to happen on the Rockets. I really am. I think that's probably more likely to happen on some other team because the Rockets are going to fumble the ball here.
What do you think it is about him specifically that has contributed to this lack of conviction in him being like almost a core piece? Like I just don't know if they consider him a core piece of this team. What is it? Is it the defense? Is it they just don't see in offense when you have Jalen Green and you have Jabari Smith and now you have Amen Thompson? Like you just don't see a vision where the offense should run through this big man that you have.
I think there was an image that everyone had of Jabari, or not Jabari, of Sengun and Jalen Green and all these guys, and they came in the league. And oftentimes it's hard to break that vision, right? Like when you draft a guy, it is hard to break the vision of what you see them as.
Mhm.
And I think Sengun very clearly broke the vision his rookie year. He was much better than they anticipated. I can say that with great confidence. Like I thought he was a guy who was destined for the G League that rookie year. He made his way to the starting lineup by his second year, by his second season. And that's because he was that good. So I think he just kept surprising them, and they never lifted the bar for him. Right? They're like, okay, this is your new bar. Okay, this is your new bar. They were never like, okay, can this be your new bar? They're just like, okay, I guess. It's like there's like a reluctance there to give him the next thing, right? It's like I think it stems from the defense, right? I think it stems from like a lack of faith in the defense. I think he's actually not as bad as they seem to believe he is. He's not great, but he's not he's not bad enough to not explore this, right? To not give this a chance with second units. Let him run freaking second units, man. Like like I can't believe they last year they would take Jalen Green and Alperen Sengun off the floor at the same time and have like nobody there running the offense. It's like this guys is a golden opportunity to get a look at him running a unit by himself, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so like they did stuff like that, and I don't know, maybe Udoka sees it differently. I'm skeptical because of what he seems to prioritize and what he was chasing in the offseason. And I know that he was the driving force behind their Brook Lopez pursuit. I can say that with pretty good confidence, right? Like I think it's just it stems from like what they viewed from him and how that hasn't changed. What they viewed him as a draft pick and how that hasn't changed. And I was hoping, he'd be able to out talent his way there. It hasn't happened yet, so I'm skeptical it's gonna happen. We'll see. Like, he just posted a 30 piece today, right? Like he was ridiculous today. And I wonder if like Udoka's watching this at all, or if anyone in that coaching staff is like sending him clips or anything. Like I just want them to like at least like be aware that he has this in him, that he has this ridiculous ceiling in him if you just give him the keys. I just don't think they want to give him the keys for one reason or another. Maybe they just view Jalen as more that guy, or maybe they view Jabari as more that guy, and they never have ever viewed Alperen Sengun as one of those guys, and they never adjusted. They never course corrected. And so I don't know. We'll see. This is a very frustrating conversation for me. I just try to get off of it every time. I just like let's just move on because it's until it happens, we're wasting our time. I'm wasting my time talking about it, and I feel like the listeners are tired of me talking about it.
Maybe ours aren't. They don't have you on too often, so there's a chance that they're like, all right, we need to hear more of this. But I am fascinated just to see kind of what happens here, and it almost feels like he needs to give them reasons not to take him off the floor ever. Basically, like if he's just not perfect, like if they're gonna get mad because he tries one of his trademark super risky passes and they're gonna pull him because of turnovers, or if he just misses on defense and they're trying to use him in drop, or he's just not really switching as well and they're just gonna have that quick hook with him. He almost needs to be not perfect, but it feels like he's gonna need to like be close to idealistic just so they can view him as you view him. And I think a lot of NBA people who watch the NBA understand like this guy's really, 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 really good on offense. Like really, like borderline has the potential, I would say, to be transcendent on offense.
Yeah. I mean, I'm tired of talking about it. I really do think like for me, if it's not obvious to you, it's never gonna be obvious, right? Like it's never gonna change, right? Like if you don't watch him in NBA games and see what I see, we're watching something else, or like we're watching the game through a different filter, right? And I can't change that for you, right? It's not a bad. It may not necessarily be a bad thing, right? It just maybe we're watching the game from two different angles, and I can't change that angle for you. You just have to see it yourself, And I think again, like for me, it was obvious after that first year. Oh shit, they might have something. Like I mean, like I thought he was in the BSL. It seemed like, oh, this is very, very intriguing. I thought this is a starting center, and after that first year, it's like, oh, he's probably more than a starting center. Someone you should keep an eye on, and it never got there for them. So we'll see what happens next year. But until something happens, I just think he's kind of a placeholder starting center for them next year. And you know,
We'll see.
like I don't know. I shouldn't say because you don't know, and neither do I. We're just gonna have to see next year.
Another player whose future seems fuzzy with this team, just based off the personnel they already have, Kevin Porter Jr. is really good. One of the most efficient spot up shooters in the league. He's turned himself into. What is the future with him for this team, or even his immediate role on this team? Do you think that he could potentially get lost within the shuffle here?
No, I think he's gonna have like another kind of step up year. I think he's going to get even better next year. Because if you look at, so I went back and I analyzed because I have way too much time on this flight, and like I was bored out of my mind. Like, when do players make that jump, right? To like all-star caliber, right? I'm not saying KP is going to make that like an all-star elite or whatever, but like, when do players make that jump into like what they're going to be for the rest of their careers, right? And it seems to be like the production seems to happen. That production leap seems to happen that fourth year. So it's not the third year, right? Which is like what we traditionally assume. It's like, oh, it's the third year. No, it's actually like the fourth year, and then the fifth year they get recognized for it. So like the fifth year they make like if you look at all the like the past like 10 years of draft classes, by that fifth year, most of the time is like when these guys make their first All-Star game, right? But that production jump, like to where they're playing at an all-star caliber level, happens in the fourth year. So KPJ is entering his fourth year. So that production jump and that efficiency jump is theoretically going to happen now. Mm-hmm. And it's unfortunate for him that he's going to be coming off the bench as it happens, but I actually think this is his ideal NBA role. Okay. So I think this is a good year. I think he's due for a good year. Like I think again, like this is what I've always viewed him as. And I think like people view that as an insult. I don't. I think that's like if you're a sixth man.
It's not an insult at all.
Yeah, if you're a sixth man, if you're the third guard in the NBA, dude, you're beating like 400 players. Like it's such a hard thing to do, and so I think he's due for a big year. I'm really, really excited to see him in this role. I think he's probably like I think Rockets fans have cooled on him. Originally they were way too hot on him. Like they were comparing him to like James Harden and stuff, and it's like guys, that's way, way too ambitious. And now it's like they're almost too low on him, right? It's like they completely turned on him. It's like this guy's a scrub. He's not a starting point guard, so he's just not good. It's like no, he's very much a good player, and I think right now he's going to have the opportunity to show like this is my best role. This is what I'm going to be best at in the NBA, and I think he's going to thrive. I think he's going to have a really good year next year.
I think I'm with you. His contract, though, is just like eminently tradable. And so that's why he would just also be someone that I monitor if they're looking to do something on the wings or in the front court. The other player, Tari Eason, resident chaos creator, wild when it comes to deflection, just a great defender. Showed some flashes on offense, just feels to kind of be all over the place there. What are you kind of looking from him in year two? And I would argue, like I think with the makeup of this team, just like looking at how young their primary bigs are in Jabari and Sengun and maybe some of the stuff they want to do. I know you have Amen Thompson. I know you have Dillon Brooks. I think he's actually become even more important to them.
Yeah, he might get squeezed. Like it's because you look at the front court, you have Jabari, you have Sengun, you have Dillon Brooks, you have Jae'Sean Tate. That's 5 guys already, right? So he's gonna be like your 6th front court rotation player, right? It's gonna be.
I think Tate gets squeezed before Tari Eason does.
That might be like justifiable. I don't know if it always works out that way, right? Because he's like Jae'Sean Tate's like 4 years older than him, right? And he's better defensively right now. I haven't seen both of them play at the same time in a while, so like we'll see if that's still the case. But like, I just have a feeling that Udoka is going to favor the veteran and play the veteran a lot more. So I'm not saying he's going to get squeezed out of the lineup. I just don't think he's going to play like 25 minutes per game. I think he's going to play more like 15 to 20, just because of how packed that rotation is. It's going to be tough to find a lot of guys minutes. Again, like I just said, I think Cam Whitmore is going to be in the G League. I think if it wasn't Cam, it'd be Tari, right? Like it's that tight. It's that tight, and someone has to not play, like for everybody to get equitable playing time.
Yeah, I'm this rotation, and I think where's this? Yeah, this is the next thing I have. It's the cookie cutter portion of the podcast, but it's also, I think, for this team specifically, a fascinating question. And so, how do you see this 10-man rotation shaking out? And I think it's probably best to maybe unpack it from the starting five. And so I have penciled in Fred VanVleet, Jalen Green, Dillon Brooks, and Jabari Smith Jr. and Alperen Sengun. Is that who you would expect to be the starters here as well?
Yeah, and I have it that way right now. Udoka has said that he's gonna have an open mind with every starting spot. Again, I'm always skeptical with when coaches make those kinds of statements, but he said it. So if that's really gonna be the case, is there a possibility that Tari Eason has a better training camp than Jabari Smith? Because if that's the case, then he may not get squeezed, right? Like he may have like the opposite of getting squeezed. But yeah, I would say more likely you are correct. That's the starting five.
I think there are at least 3 locks in the reserves department then, which would be Amen Thompson, Tari Eason, and Kevin Porter Jr. Would you also agree with that? It's like we're at 8 with all those players.
Yeah, I would add Tate as a fourth lock.
So that's 9. And then it's like, is the 10 spot Jeff Green, Jock Landale? Like where are we? Cam Whitmore, you already said is going to spend a lot of time in the G League, so maybe it's easy to sort of write off him. I'm sure it'll change, but like if you had to pick, like who's going to wind up having it does feel like at this point, based off everyone we've named, unless you're really high on Aaron Holiday for some reason, it's kind of like, well, who plays the bigger role, Jock Landale or Jeff Green on this team?
I would probably say Jeff, just because he's, I think he's going to fit. He's familiar with him. And I think, Jeff was the backup center on the title team last year, right? Like I think he has some real sway there. And I think Landale is going to be a guy who I'm not going to say will get squeezed because he's always been squeezed, right? He was already squeezed, right? That's why he's in Houston. But I think that's someone that is going to have to scratch and claw for his playing time. Because again, I really do think Jabari is going to be playing back up 5. And I think Tate's
that's smart, by the way. I want to see Sengun. You're higher on Sengun than I am, but I don't think Sengun sucks. I want to see them use both of them properly. I don't view, and by that, like, you don't need to get Jeff Green and Landale minutes. It's just where I'm at. It's like those guys are there. And if you need them, okay, sure. But like, you don't have to give them minutes.
No, exactly. They can just be injured reserves, right? Like, and
in case of emergency, guys. Yeah.
Right, and same thing with Cam. Unfortunately, I would like to see Cam get minutes because I think he's that talented, but I just don't think there's going to be any pathway as long as everybody's healthy. But yeah, I think like have the rotation be short and just have the minutes be more meaningful. I think it's actually more conducive to actually like better seasons. Like I don't think the teams with like 10 to 12 guys playing every night are actually like the teams that win. Like that seldom works. I think it's more likely the teams that are like playing 8-man rotations, maybe 9-man rotations that are like the good teams, right? Like those are the teams that actually like know what they know who they are and know how to get by every night. And if you're playing 12 guys, that just sounds to me like you're a confused team. You don't know who's good on your team. And so I think it's better to just like narrow it down. Have people be angry with you. That's fine. Like it's okay to have people angry with you. If you're actually running like a good locker room, there's always going to be a small portion of the locker room that's like angry with you. But that's fine as long as it's not the majority.
I will say in Houston's case, I think when you're still trying to find out so much information about not just your overarching direction, but so many players on your team, I do think it's probably okay in their case to expand the rotation if it's a matter of like we really want Cam Whitmore to get minutes, then like at the NBA level, then by all means just like expand the guard rotation. It's just like if you're playing, Jock Landale, Jeff Green, guys you don't figure in long term. I guess I see your point there. Like, let's shrink it. It does feel like
we don't need more data on those guys, right?
fair. And I feel like I think Jock Landale is a little bit more interesting than you're giving him credit for, but not at the expense of gives Jabari more time at the 5. I'm actually of the mind just like I only view them as 8 lot. You know better than I do, so I'm just going to default. I just feel like Jae'Sean Tate is like kind of the guy that could just be shafted out a little bit, and maybe I'm just wrong. It feels like there's 8 locks, but I think I'm with you said Landale probably winds up playing more than Jeff Green, right? Is what you went with?
No, I think Jeff Green plays
more.
Oh,
you think Jeff Green does? Okay.
Yeah.
What do you think? This team has undergone so much change. What do you think their biggest weakness is, right? Like, what's your biggest concern about them?
My biggest concern about them has always been the same, right? It's just 3-point shooting, right? Like until Jabari becomes like a legitimate like threat from 3-point range, which he wasn't last year, right? Like they don't have like A+ 3-point shooter on the team yet, right? Like I think VanVleet's like the only one, right? Like I think he's like 36, 37%. Is that what he is?
I think Jalen Green is just there. Like
I'm with you. Like I kind of mentally think he'll get there. Like I think he's a fine 3-point shooter, but he's not.
And KPJ too. He's already there.
KPJ, sure, fair enough, but he's not starting, right? Like this is like yeah, and like I think that's probably going to be their biggest weakness. Like you have a starting lineup that includes 3 non-shooters, like Sengun, Dillon Brooks, and for right now, Jabari Smith. It's not ideal, right? Like at least one of those guys has to become a threat. Obviously the obvious guy there is Jabari Smith. So that's probably the biggest weakness. The other big weakness is what we kind of talked about on my podcast, which was like I don't know who the guy is, right? Until I know who the guy is, this team is just a giant question mark. Until we all know who's going to be the driving force of their offense, of their franchise long term, you can't just have, this guy is going to be your best player tonight and this guy will be your best player tomorrow night. Like you got to have the guy be the guy, and the team will form around him, and the offense will be much more structured that way.
Who do you think shoots a higher percentage from 3 next season, Dillon Brooks or Jabari Smith Jr.?
I would hope it's Jabari, but I suspect
for sure.
Yeah, I would suspect they're closer than you'd be comfortable with, right? Like the percentage wise, I think they're probably going to be closer to each other. And ironically, that would be an upgrade for Jabari. If Jabari shoots as well as Dillon Brooks shot from 3 last year, that would be an upgrade for Jabari Smith, which is saying a lot, right? That's how bad Jabari Smith shot from 3 last year, right? Like if he shoots as well as Dillon Brooks shot, we're in a good spot. We're on the upwards.
What do you think this team's in close games? It'll be matchup dependent. I get all that, but right now, what would be your most preferred closing lineup for this team?
My preferred closing lineup, I would say Sengun at the 5. I'd say Green at the 2. I would say VanVleet at the 1. At the 3, it might just be their starting lineup. Maybe I'd swap out Jabari with Tari, right? Because I think he's slightly better right now, but I think that's probably where I'd go.
I feel like they would be more inclined to swap out Sengun with Tari than Jabari, right?
I was about to say the same thing. I think that's probably there, but that wasn't your question.
Right? No, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
This is my favorite question to ask you, though. What is a weirdo lineup you want them to try this season?
A weirdo lineup I want them to try this. I haven't thought about this. What about Tari at the 5?
Look, I am a small ball enthusiast, so I'm all for it.
Tari at the 5, and you play Jae'Sean at the 4. You can have Dillon Brooks be your 3. Have Amen slide down to your 2. And you can play VanVleet at the 1. You can play Green at the 1. Actually, I think play Green at the 1. Have VanVleet come off the bench, right? So you have basically a lineup of Green, Amen, Brooks, Tate, and Tari. Just everybody is 6'6", right? Everybody is 6'6". and you can switch everything. You can you still have shooting other than other than Jae'Sean Tate. Everybody there can shoot, and that I don't sorry, other than Amen and Tate. You have decent shooting on the floor. So it's a lineup I would like to see. I think they should get weird. I think they should again get as much data as you can. These are the only these are the only years you can experiment because you're not trying to you are trying to win, but you're not there's not an overwhelming pressure to win like 45 to 50 wins right now, right? Like you can try and have 15 minutes a game allotted to experimenting or 10 minutes a game, whatever, right? And the other 30 minutes is actually dedicated to winning the basketball game, but whatever. Like just like because if you don't experiment, you'll never know, right? You'll never know how versatile Tari Eason is if you're not having him ever play center. You won't know uh, how mobile Alperen Sengun is if you're never switching with him, right? You're not gonna know like how good of a playmaker Jalen Green is if you're never playing him at the point, right? So just like have moments where you're just doing funky stuff, so you can kind of get as much data as you can, and then you can make more informed decisions off that data.
I'll take you one step further and go the Amen Thompson +4 shooters, but everyone's just super tiny lineup where it's Tari Eason, Fred VanVleet, Jalen Green, and then Kevin Porter Jr. And like, let's just see. You don't need to put the ball in Amen Thompson's hands, but like, let's put the ball in Amen Thompson's hands and kind of just see what happens. I think that your lineup, I feel like, has a puncher's chance in hell of happening. My lineup has just no puncher's chance in hell of happening, but I would pay probably too much money to see it.
Honestly, like KPJ and Amen Thompson make their lineup constructions really fun because they're so big. Like KPJ 6'5", Amen Thompson 6'8", or 6'6", excuse me. Like these guys are giant and they're playing guard positions, and you can just kind of get fun with it. Like play them at 2, at 3, at 4, and really get weird. And you have all these wings. Like the Rockets have a ton of wings, and they were never like this. They weren't like this during the Harden era. They had like 2 wings, which is like Eric Gordon and like Trevor Ariza. Like they didn't have that many wings, right? Like PJ Tucker. At one point in time, they had like a decent amount. They had Luka Mbamute, PJ Tucker, Trevor Ariza, and like Eric Gordon. Other than that one season, they only had like 2, maybe 3 wings, right? And then the micro ball season, which was just weird. I like to forget that season didn't happen, right? But like other than that, like they never really had this much wing depth, and so it's kind of exciting to see like kind of the different possibilities, right? You could get kind of real high end and think about Boston Celtics like outcomes, or you can just kind of think like, hey, can they be like I don't know, like the Grizzlies and just have guys be really competent across the board?
So as of now, their over under is set at 31.5. Are you taking the over or the under on that? And where do you see them kind of stacking up in the larger context of the Western Conference?
So I had them winning 30 games last year, right? Like that was my prediction. And they obviously never got there. I think I probably overdid it by 3. Like I think I probably if I were to do that over again, I'd say I probably should have set that at 27 wins, right? I think that means I still think that Steven Silas underachieved, like actively pushed their win total down by like 5 wins, right? So I still think they underachieved. I think as of now, if I'm saying that they should have been a 27 win team last year, and they added Fred VanVleet, they added Dillon Brooks, I kind of think they should be a 35 win team this year.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
yeah, I kind of think they should. That should be at least at the very least their aim, their goal. Um, and if you're not gonna get there, things can get really scary in terms of like ownership. I again, I on the podcast I had with you, I said I think Rafael Stone has done enough, in my opinion, to earn an extension. But if they don't win like 35 games, it could get really scary. Like, not only does he not get an extension, are we talking about like, are they starting a general manager search this time next year? Like, I hope not. I hope not.
What's interesting though is I think the only teams though that you can actually guarantee they'll be better than are probably Portland and San Antonio right now in the West. And
Yeah.
maybe depending on how you feel like will Utah trade themselves out of that position again. But like that's a team where it's a coin toss. And then after that, it's like I don't even know are they going to be better than New Orleans, OKC, Minnesota? I don't think so. And so
Here's
I
a
probably
crazy statement. Like, Lauri Markkanen is probably better than everybody on the Rockets right now. Right? That's how
right
good
now,
that.
yes. When you're
Yeah.
talking about ceilings, I think they probably still have 3 players
Yeah.
with a higher ceiling. You'd probably say 4 because of Sengun. Maybe you'd say 3 because you might think Jabari never gets to Lowry. I'd go under. But I do also wonder, is this a team that could be aggressive in acquiring more win now talent with the incumbent assets they have because they want to get better? Or was this offseason just more about, hey, we don't want to send OKC the number 5 pick. And so we're not going to accelerate the process to that degree. That's not what this is signaling. Or is there a chance, like I just mentioned, that, hey, and you kind of mentioned it earlier in this podcast about they want to, they can go in and they can get anybody. They can get any conversation they want, depending on who becomes available.
They are a sleeping giant right now. With every major name that becomes available, I would keep an eye on Houston. Every major name that from here until they make that move, right? Like, whether that's Joel Embiid, whether that's Jaylen Brown in 6 or 7 months, whenever he's eligible to be traded, right?
I think he can't be traded at all for a year at this point
Yeah,
because of the Supermax stuff. Would
right.
they? I think people would be shocked based off how they view Sengun. I think that Houston would look at Karl-Anthony Towns if he becomes available. The other name I would watch, like pie in the sky name, just 2 of them. I wouldn't be shocked if they took a look at Siakam. And I also would not be shocked if they took a look at Zion Williamson, depending on if whatever goes on in New Orleans there.
I think the 3 names there that, like, I would seriously consider. I think they're talented enough to like warrant, putting Sengun in there, or obviously Embiid. Like, Embiid's, just came off an MVP season. Like, he's worth putting Sengun in, right? Like, as high as I am on Sengun, I think if you have a chance to go get Embiid, I think you should try and go get Embiid.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. I think Towns, I would think about it. I'm less like go for it.
I wouldn't do it for this team. I just don't think he's what they need. I want to make that clear, but I do think that they would look at it.
I would think about it. I would, because he is that good offensively, right? Like he but I still think he's more of a finishing piece than he is like someone I'd go get, right? Like I think right now it's not someone I would go get right now.
They do feel like more of a team that, like, maybe they become sellers, like maybe Tate becomes available or something along those lines. They feel like a team that is, I don't want to say exclusively, but maybe exclusively are only going to chase the home run swing. Like, they're not at a point where it's like, hey, let's just hit this double on the market and we're going to be a team that's involved on Bogdanovich or Bojan Bogdanovich or just any of these like sort of
Pascal, as you said, right? Like I don't think they go after Pascal.
All right, that's fair. I wouldn't. He's like higher end enough for me to look at. And maybe if there's a guy who's not a star, like, are they a team? They'll have, like, are they a team that looks at OG if he becomes available? Like, I could see something like that. They would look at Mikal Bridges for sure if he becomes available in Brooklyn. But like, those are all, I don't know where I land on OG, but like all the names we mentioned are pretty much like home run swings, which is what I think we gravitate towards because they have the assets. But just based off where they are in their development, it's not about hitting these singles and doubles. It's about these triples and home runs if those becomes available. And so I would, if you told me what's the percentage chance that Houston acquires like a top 100 to 30 or top 100 to top 40 player versus top 39 to top 10, I'm going to say it's more likely they go that higher end route than just this, oh, this guy's good or whatever, because that's just not really what they need when they have so many players and possibilities on their own roster to evaluate.
Yeah, if you're gonna go for if you're gonna consolidate, go consolidate, right?
That's
right,
more
like
succinct, better way of putting it.
Right, like I think I would go for the Zion. I would go for the Embiid. Like I would go for the guy who might actually be the best player on your team one day, right? Like I think that's the home run swing. That's the one where I'm like, yeah, I don't care what they just gave up because that they got that guy. They got that guy, and I think that's the conversation worth exploring. And man, they're right. They have all the contracts, and they have all the young players, and there are teams that can go toe to toe. Like OKC can top them if they wanted to, right? OKC is like they're the real sleeping giant, but Houston's just right below them, right? Like they can be inactive in conversations.
Houston and New Orleans are just like the teams below OKC, where it's like if they want to do something, they have like not just the picks, but also just like the players teams would be interested in. And I am curious what you think on. My guess would be, and maybe they just become available, but like they're going to look at something where it's like a wing type player or a front court player, where it's like if one of these guards becomes available, even if they're young, like Trae Young, if he hits the market, that's not someone that I would expect them to be in on. It feels like they would gravitate more towards like Paul, if everything blows up in LA and Paul George becomes available or something, like they're going to go that route, or Mikal Bridges, even though some people might consider him a 2 or what. It's not. I just feel like with Amen Thompson, Fred VanVleet, even KPJ here and Jalen Green, I don't think they'll look at a smaller guard. Like if Shea Gilgeous-Alexander or Devin Booker became available, okay, sure. Or like, but they're not going to become available. Like if I think Trae Young's like the good barometer where it's okay, like he's really good, but I just don't think they're a team that would sniff around that. Sorry.
I might have done it if Jalen Green wasn't on the roster, right? Like he's the only guy. Like I just think if you're gonna go get a guard, go get a guy who's a plus defender, right? Like you have to get someone. I think you have to put a plus defender next to Jalen Green, and I think that's kind of why Amen makes so much more sense, like long term, and VanVleet makes a lot of sense short term, right? Like I kind of think they're I don't want to say they're set at the point guard position because Amen's downside is real, right? Like if he doesn't become a decent shooter, like he's just a project, right? He's just a failed project. That's what he is. Like it's just guys like him don't work out if they can't shoot. So, but like I kind of like where they're at though. Like I kind of like these bets. I kind of like VanVleet as a short term bet, and like I kind of like Amen as a long term bet there. I think we're kind of on the right track. They're gonna more likely trade for a front court guy, and I think if we're talking about front court guys, I think the guys that you want to monitor are the high end guys, and and that's when you got to look at the situations that are kind of in flux. Philly is kind of in flux. New Orleans is kind of
just a little bit.
Yeah, New Orleans is kind of in flux, right? Like these are
would you look at Brandon Ingram? Speaking of New Orleans, if he became where it's not Zion, it's decide, hey, Brandon Ingram's extension eligible. We don't know we want to keep him long term. Yada yada yada. We have Herb Jones. We have Trey Murphy. Not those guys aren't better than him, but you get what I'm saying.
I think about it. Yeah, I certainly don't think there's anyone on the roster where it's like, oh, I definitely think this guy's going to become a better small forward option than Brandon Ingram. Like maybe you could say the high end outcome of Cam Whitmore, is there, but like there's also like low end scenarios that are possible if you don't go and get Brandon Ingram, right? You solidify yourself a little bit when you go get like you clearly outline your floor when you go get Brandon Ingram, right? And that's fine. Like that's a really solid floor, and you're consolidating assets, so that's also a positive, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's not a bad target for Houston.
Is there anyone or anything else about this team I didn't ask you about you think we need to discuss?
No, I just think they're going to be really, really fascinating next year in terms of just like not only like how much better are they going to be, right? But the fundamental question that I keep coming back to is who's going to be him, right? Who's going to be the guy? That's the question I want most answered about the Rockets. I don't care how many wins they have next year, right? Like that's an interesting conversation. It's not as interesting as why they win as many games as they win, right? Like who is driving their winning? Like that, like cool, they win 40 games. I don't care, right? If there's still a giant pile of blah, that doesn't matter to me. right?
If it's just sort of 40 wins by committee rather than having this singular force that, maybe elevated everyone around them, but you're looking for that pole star. And I think it's fair to say they have options, which is good. They have a few options, but we talked about this. OKC looks at Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and knows, and they don't have that right now.
Right. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing to not know yet.
But you have options. Again, it's not like you have nobody.
Right. But like, if you don't find out within the next 2 years, it gets scary. It gets scary not necessarily for fans, but like for the front office and for I would say some of these players, because they may be on their way out to go get the guy, right?
Yeah.
Like I think that's what I would pay attention to.
Salman, this was great as always. You were able to tell one last time our listeners where they can find you and all the great work that you do.
Thank you. It is at Salman Ali NBA on Twitter. The website's rednationhoops.com. That's also the Substack as well. The podcast, Red Nation Hoops. You can find me on YouTube, Red Nation Hoops. You can find me on Threads at Salman Ali NBA and at Red Nation Hoops.
You're on Blue Sky too, right? Let's not forget about that.
Yeah, but I don't know. I don't know if that's going to be the platform that really kicks off, Dan. I don't know. Maybe.
You think it's Threads? I've seen people go back and forth. I'm not on Threads, full disclosure, but
no, I don't. Here's the thing. I don't know. I just know that we gotta figure this out. We gotta figure out our next spot. Like we all gotta have like a meeting. Like I don't know if I'm eligible to be in the meeting. Like I don't know how big you have to be. Like we have to get together and figure this out. Like iron this out. Like where are we going? Like this confusion. Like we just need to like the powers that be need to come together and pick something.
I don't want to be part of the decision-making process. I just want to know. That's where just tell me where we're going and I will follow.
Just send me a text. Yeah. Send me I don't have to be at the meeting. Send me a text, right?
Hey, look, everybody join our Discord. We have fans from every team in there. Like for now, that link is in our podcast and YouTube description as well. But yeah, I want to know where we're going. Salman, this was great as always. Thank you so much for your time. And I think, as you know, it won't be a year before I pester you again to come back on.
I'll be happy to come back on.